Mark and Linda are a married couple with an 8-year-old daughter named Chloe. One night, Mark and Linda go out for dinner and leave Chloe at home with her babysitter, Mrs. Highsmith. Not long after her parents leave, Chloe says she is starving and really wants mac and cheese. Mrs. Highsmith boils water, but it quickly becomes clear she does not actually know how to make it. Chloe gets impatient, climbs up using a small step stool, and starts showing Mrs. Highsmith what to do. But in the middle of it, Chloe's arm gets splashed by hot water. The moment Linda hears what happened, she and Mark rush home and find Chloe already being treated by paramedics. After checking on Chloe, Linda listens as one of the responders quietly suggests something serious. Mrs. Highsmith is showing signs of dementia, and keeping her as a babysitter could be dangerous. After the paramedics leave, Linda sits down with Mrs. Highsmith. It is a hard conversation because Mrs. Highsmith has cared for Chloe since she was 3. But Linda feels she has no choice. She lets her go. Mrs. Highsmith tries to accept it with grace, apologizing again and again for what happened. Now with no babysitter, Mark and Linda struggle to juggle work and parenting. The situation forces Mark to bring Chloe along to his job site, where he is renovating an old house he plans to sell. Mark is a real estate agent, but he also does the construction work himself. While Mark stays busy, Chloe is told to play outside. At one point, she spots a nail gun lying around and mistakes it for a toy. She is seconds away from getting hurt, but a woman nearby steps in just in time and stops her. Chloe runs to her dad, excited to introduce her new friend Heather. Heather explains she lives close by and noticed Chloe playing with the nail gun. She could not ignore it because it was way too dangerous. Mark is immediately impressed by how attentive and responsible Heather seems. And almost right away, he starts thinking the same thing. This might be the perfect person to look after Chloe. That same day, Mark brings Heather home and introduces her to Linda. Linda is uneasy. Heather is a stranger, and they barely know anything about her. But Mark is clearly enthusiastic, and he asks Linda to at least consider it. He suggests doing a quick interview just to learn more about Heather and make sure she checks out. So they interview her that day. Heather's answers come easily, and she sounds confident and experienced. She even tells them she has worked as a babysitter before, and she offers the message number of her previous employer as a reference. Before the interview ends, Linda mentions the accident with their last babysitter and makes it clear she does not want anything like that to ever happen again. Heather listens, takes it seriously, and then heads out, saying she will wait to hear back. As she leaves, Heather also makes a point to compliment Chloe, calling her a smart, sweet kid, and she says she would genuinely love to be both a friend and a babysitter to her. They decide to hire her. This is Nanny Cam.
Nanny Cam.
That night, Chloe cannot stop talking about Heather. She excitedly tells her mom everything that happened earlier in the day. It is clear she already adores her. In fact, she insists she wants Heather to be her babysitter and no one else. Seeing how attached Chloe has become, Linda decides to double-check Heather's background. She calls the previous employer, whose number Heather provided. The feedback is exactly what she hopes for. Heather is described as warm, responsible, and especially good with children. Hearing that reassures Linda. She makes her decision and calls Heather to let her know she got the job. She even asks her to pick Chloe up from school the next day. Mark agrees, but he also suggests something practical. Heather is still a stranger, and it would be wise to install security cameras in the house just in case. Linda sees the logic in that. The next day, Heather officially steps into her new role. When she picks Chloe up from school, she notices a boy bothering her.
Makes me special. Especially ugly.
Heather immediately steps in and handles the situation firmly. From Chloe's perspective, Heather looks like a hero. After work, Linda stops by a surveillance store and buys a discreet camera that looks almost like an ordinary FM radio. No one would suspect it is recording. With the cameras in place, Linda feels more at ease. She can now monitor what happens at home anytime through her phone. One afternoon, Mrs. Highsmith stops by the house and sees Chloe playing outside. They exchange a few words, but then Heather suddenly appears and looks visibly startled. She quickly pulls Chloe away. Mrs. Highsmith explains that she used to care for Chloe and only wanted to say hello. But Heather does not seem interested in listening. Instead, she brings up the old accident in a harsh way, making Mrs. Highsmith feel even worse about what happened. Eventually, Mrs. Highsmith leaves, clearly burdened with guilt. Linda witnesses part of the encounter and immediately asks Heather what happened. Heather claims that Mrs. Highsmith was upset because she took over her job. Linda believes her and tells Heather not to take it personally, reminding her that Mrs. Highsmith is unwell. That evening, they invite Heather to stay for dinner so she will not feel like an outsider. For Heather, sitting at that table feels like something she has longed for. a peaceful family moment she never truly had. During dinner, the phone rings. Heather steps away to answer it. On the other end is Mrs. Highsmith again, apologizing once more and explaining she only wanted to check on Chloe earlier. But instead of responding with kindness, Heather speaks coldly and makes it clear that the family would prefer Mrs. Highsmith to stay away. Mrs. Highsmith continues apologizing, unaware she is not speaking to Linda at all, but to Heather. Heather returns to the table and casually says it was just a sales call. The family continues dinner, completely unaware of what she just did. And from this point on, it becomes clear that something is not quite right about Heather. Meanwhile, something unsettling is happening at Mrs. Highsmith's house. One night, she begins hearing strange noises.
I've looked everywhere for him, Mary, and I can't find him.
I wonder where he could be.
She checks around, but no one is there. At one point, a shadow seems to move across the room. It feels like someone is watching her. The next day, Linda receives shocking news. Mrs. Highsmith has passed away, and authorities believe she may have done the unthinkable. Linda immediately leaves work to attend the funeral. Before heading out, she gently tells Chloe about the loss. Chloe naturally wants to know what happened, but Linda says she does not know the details. As Linda prepares to leave, Heather steps in to comfort her and casually mentions that cases like this are common among people with dementia. That comment makes Linda pause. She never mentioned how Mrs. Highsmith died, so how would Heather know? After returning from the funeral, Linda feels uneasy again. The house is spotless, almost too spotless. The air smells fresh, and even the laundry has been washed and neatly folded. She finds Heather and asks why she did all that. Heather explains she had free time while Chloe was sleeping and simply wanted to stay busy. But Linda is not pleased. She reminds Heather that her only responsibility is taking care of Chloe, nothing more. That same night, Linda reviews the security footage. What she sees bothers her. Heather and Chloe spend hours just talking. Chloe is not studying, not practicing her violin, just sitting and chatting endlessly. The next morning, things get worse. Chloe refuses to eat the breakfast Linda prepared, saying she would rather wait for Heather because she cooks better. On top of that, Chloe announces she no longer wants to play the violin. Instead, she wants to perform a monologue that Heather has been teaching her for the school talent show. Now Linda is genuinely upset. Ever since Heather arrived, Chloe has started pushing back against her. When Heather comes in, Linda makes it clear that Chloe will be playing the violin at the talent show, not performing a monologue. She also questions why they have been talking for hours every day, calling it unproductive. Heather calmly explains they were discussing Mrs. Highsmith and practicing for the show, but Linda firmly repeats her decision. The violin stays. At that moment, something shifts. Heather begins to wonder how Linda knows so much about what happens inside the house. Suspicion creeps in. She starts looking around and eventually discovers one of the hidden cameras. Later that day, Linda notices Chloe practicing violin again, but she suspects Heather has already figured out she is being watched. Concerned, she confides in her friend Jess and admits she has been monitoring the nanny because her behavior keeps getting stranger. Jess suggests adding even more cameras around the house just to be safe. Back at the house, Mark comes home earlier than usual after injuring his knee at work. Heather quickly steps in, bringing him painkillers and checking the bruise on his leg. In that moment, she shifts the conversation to something more personal. She talks about how much she dreams of having a family of her own, and even hints that she wishes for a husband like Mark. The tone changes. Heather starts flirting. Mark tries to brush it off and keep his distance. Not wanting to cross a line, he tells her it is time to go home. But after waiting for a while, he realizes she has not actually left. Curious, he checks the security cameras. What he sees shocks him. Heather is deliberately undressing in front of one of the cameras. Mark hesitates, thinking it over. Then he heads downstairs, and this time, he does not turn away from temptation. Meanwhile, Linda continues to grow suspicious. On her way home from work, she buys several more hidden cameras in different shapes and sizes. She secretly installs them in her bedroom, Chloe's room, and even in the kitchen. She does not tell anyone, not even Mark. A few days later, it is finally the day of Chloe's talent show. After helping Chloe get ready, Heather goes to find Mark in his room. He tries to refuse her attention, but she pushes past his resistance until he gives in. Once she is done, Heather calmly heads out to the car ahead of everyone else. Sitting alone in the vehicle, she makes a call to the police and reports an emergency. At the same time, Linda is rushing from work to make it to the performance. On the way, she is pulled over by officers. At first, she assumes it is a speeding issue. Instead, she is told there has been a report of a child abduction involving a car matching hers. The police search her vehicle but find nothing. Even so, Linda is taken in for questioning. By the time she finally makes it home that night, the talent show is long over. Chloe is upset and refuses to speak to her mother. Linda immediately suspects Heather had something to do with it. She confronts her and threatens to contact her parents. Heather appears terrified. She breaks down and admits she lied about her family. She claims she ran away 6 months ago because her parents were abusive. She says she lives out of town and is willing to quit immediately, as long as Linda does not tell her parents where she is. Mark watches this emotional confession and feels sympathy for her. Even after discovering she lied, he defends her. He assures her that Linda will not contact her parents and allows her to leave for the night to calm down. After Heather leaves, Mark turns his frustration toward Linda. He criticizes her for attacking Heather and insists she should be grateful, especially since Heather supported Chloe during the performance. That argument only deepens the cracks in their marriage. Now more than ever, Linda wants to know who Heather really is. She tries calling the number Heather once gave her as a reference. But the truth comes out. The number does not belong to a former employer. It belongs to Heather herself, and she ignores the call. From that point on, Heather senses that Linda is getting closer to the truth. And quietly, she begins planning her next move, a way to remove Linda from the picture entirely. It turns out Heather has been living in the very house Mark is renovating. When Linda checks the security footage from earlier that day, she discovers it has all been erased. Mark deleted it himself to hide his relationship with Heather. He apologizes, claiming that spying on someone was wrong and that it never should have happened. But Linda is confused. Installing the cameras was their joint decision. Now suddenly, Mark is acting like the entire thing was a mistake. Worse, his words sound like a defense of Heather. He insists everyone makes mistakes and tells Linda she is being too harsh. The argument escalates when Mark suggests Heather has been more attentive to Chloe than Linda has, and even implies that Linda cares more about her career than her family. The fight grows heated, and outside, unseen by them, Heather watches the tension she created unfold, quietly satisfied. The next day, still searching for answers, Linda overhears Chloe and Heather mention a name: Jack Kleber, Heather's father. Determined to learn more, Linda tracks down an address with help from an employee at the CCTV store. Before leaving, she sends a voice note saying she will be home late that night. Heather receives the message. Once Mark gets home, Heather prepares a special dinner just for the two of them. She seems to believe this private moment will not come again. At the same time, Linda arrives at the home of Jack Kleber. When she mentions Heather's name, the couple inside looks stunned and quickly invites her in. Jack admits that Heather ran away months ago. According to him, she has always been difficult to control. Linda asks to see photos, wanting to confirm whether this is truly the same Heather. When Jack shows her the pictures, Linda is horrified. The photos are styled in a way that feels disturbingly inappropriate. Jack speaks proudly about how beautiful Heather is and how much he enjoys photographing her like that. In that instant, Linda understands why Heather ran away. She quickly says the girl in those photos is not the Heather she is looking for and leaves the house. Outside, Heather's mother approaches Linda privately and begs her to hide Heather and keep her location secret from her father. Shaken by what she has learned, Linda drives home. It is nearly midnight when she arrives. Mark is already asleep. Believing he is exhausted from work, she chooses not to wake him. The next morning, Linda tells Mark everything she learned about Heather's parents. She explains that Heather comes from a deeply troubled home and that it likely shaped the person she has become. After hearing the full story, Mark finally agrees. They decide to fire Heather that very day. Not long after, Heather arrives. Linda informs her that her services are no longer needed. She also mentions meeting her parents, which clearly catches Heather off guard. Linda says she cannot tolerate the lies anymore. As much as she feels sorry for her, protecting her own family comes first. But the nightmare is far from over. Later that day, while Linda is giving a presentation at work, her monitor suddenly displays intimate footage of Heather and Mark together in bed. The humiliation is instant and overwhelming. Linda storms out of the office and confronts Mark. Mark has no defense. He breaks down, ashamed, admitting he agreed to fire Heather because he feared she would destroy their marriage. He apologizes repeatedly, furious with himself for betraying Linda. Linda rushes upstairs to find Chloe, but her daughter is gone. Panic sets in. She checks the security footage and sees Heather emerging from under a bed, taking Chloe with her. Heather then leaves a message demanding that Linda come alone to the renovation house if she wants her daughter alive. Linda drives there immediately. Inside the old house, she finds Heather holding with a nail gun. Desperate, Linda begs for her daughter's release and promises to give Heather whatever she wants. That is when Heather reveals the truth. Jack Kleber is not her biological father. He adopted her. And according to Heather, Linda is her real mother. For years, Heather has been searching for the woman who abandoned her. She discovered through her adoptive father that she was taken from a hospital. Later, she found an old recording from 18 years ago. In that footage, she saw a woman leaving a newborn baby behind. That woman was Linda, and the baby was her. Heather even kept the teddy bear that had been left with her at the hospital. That discovery turned into hatred. She grew up believing her mother discarded her, leaving her to be raised by a man like Jack Kleber. Linda, shaken, explains her side. Yes, she left her baby at the hospital, but a year later she returned, ready to take her child back. She was told the baby had died. The hospital gave her only a necklace that had belonged to the infant, something Linda had placed on her daughter to identify her. Hearing this only deepens Heather's pain. The confrontation turns violent. A struggle breaks out, and Linda is left unconscious. Mark arrives and tries to calm Heather, but her heartbreak has turned into rage. Is knocked unconscious. Linda regains consciousness and jumps back into the fight. After a desperate struggle, she manages to push Heather out of a window. Linda and her family survive the ordeal, but when they look for Heather's body, it is gone. Months later, Mark moves his family into a new home. Life appears to have returned to normal. The trauma seems buried. Then on a plane, a woman smiles at a young mother holding a baby. It is Heather. Somehow she survived. And the baby she carries has a name. It's Mark. So the moral of the story is if your nanny seems too perfect, hide your husband, your kid, and your Wi-Fi password.